Gracious Father, thank you for another day and for certainly beautiful days, certainly we're having, and certainly warm days, but thankful for time certainly here together to be in your word and to study your word and to learn more about your ways. And just thank you for gathering us all here over Zoom, and thank you for that opportunity and technology that we can do that. Also, we have people that are in need of prayers. So we pray for Pauline and family, certainly at the loss of Paul, and continue to be with them, grant them your peace and strength during this certainly time of transition and difficulty as they are missing him. Thank you certainly for his life and for the life that he has in you. Also, Lord, we ask you be with Heather and just grant her peace, strength, certainly the loss of her husband, Malin, and at such a young age. Just surround her with your love and your care. Thank you that there are many family members that are there with her, but just continue to let her know your presence and your love and help her during this very difficult time. And also we ask you to continue to be with Jenny, and as she is continuing to recover, place your healing hand upon her, that she would be able to place some weight on that leg and be able to get moving again, and hopefully we'll be able to travel with Beth back here to Utah and get settled here. Be with Beth too, and certainly give her patience and strength and during this time as well. Lord, we lift up all and other people that may be on our hearts and minds, and we place them into your care. Also, we pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Thanks, Joe. All right, so we're going to take a look at lessons. We're looking at lesson 13. So a little bit of noise behind me. Let's see. All right, so lesson's going to take a look at Matthew chapter 14, 13 through 21. And this is our gospel. A little bit of noise again behind me. Gospel for today. So I'll read that. Just pull up my Bible program here. Okay. Oops. Hold on one second. All right, so Matthew 14, 13 through 21. Oh, it's not working. Hold on. Yeah, having some trouble. Somebody else have that by chance for some reason?
You bet.
Okay, thank you, Kathy.
Now, when Jesus heard this, he withdrew from there in a boat to a desolate place by himself. When the crowds heard it, they followed him on foot. When he went ashore, he saw a great crowd, and he had compassion on them and healed their sick. Now, when it was evening, the disciples came to him and said, "This is a desolate place, and the day is now over. Send the crowds away to go into the villages and buy food for themselves." Jesus said, "They need not go away. You give them something to eat." They said to him, "We've only 5 loaves here and 2 fish." And he said, "Bring them here to me." Then he ordered the crowds to sit down on the grass, and taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, he looked up to heaven and said a blessing. Then he broke the loaves and gave them to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the crowds, and they all ate and were satisfied. And they took up 12 baskets full of the broken left over. And those who ate were about 5,000 men, besides women and children.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. All right, so taking a look here at lesson 13. So mentions here the miraculous sign was recorded by all the evangelists in the Gospels. We see it in all 4. They saw it as a striking display of the Lord's compassion for people in their need, of his power to do something about their need. The miracle surely led the people to think of the Lord's miraculously filling their ancestors' needs with the manna in the wilderness. And then it says here, now when Jesus heard this, refers to the execution of John the Baptist by Herod. So in verses 6 through 12, So number 188 is our first question for today. So what does it say about Jesus that this report made him withdraw to a desolate place? And what does it say about Jesus that even at such a time in his life and ministry, he did not decline to minister to the crowd? So kind of the first question, what do you think that says about Jesus? So again, there's the report about John being, of course, executed by Herod. So.
Well, he must have been grieving the loss of his cousin and the man who had started his ministry, or kind of was the launching of Jesus' ministry.
Yeah.
And so he was close to him just as a family member, nothing else. And he had all the emotions we have, and then some.
Yeah. No, I think you're right, and I think there's indicator of that he's grieving, and this is definitely an upsetting thing to him. And we don't, he displays various emotions and things. I mean, there's the human side of him, and helps us to kind of relate to him probably better too. It's like, but I mean, how many of us, certainly in those situations too, do we withdraw? I would say, yeah. When somebody, we lose somebody close to us, there's a tendency to kind of just to want to be alone or to isolate, at least for a while. Important thing, I think, is that we don't sort of do that or stay there for too long, that we get with people. But for a period of time, we don't really maybe want to be around anybody, at least, and while we sort of grieve, and it's kind of process. And Jesus, I think, is displaying this as well, for sure. And then kind of the second part is that, but then what does it say about him that even at such a time when he's grieving and he's having trouble, did he not decline to minister to the crowd?
For me, it shows a lot of strength, because at least when I've had a lot of loss for a young life, grief, I don't want to deal with anyone. I would rather be on my own and process it. But he's still showing he's showing the strength and compassion that they want to know what's going on. They want, me to minister to them. I will do this.
Yeah. Despite his feelings, despite what he's going through, he's still ready and willing to serve others. Which I think says a lot about his compassion and his love, as for people. And then there's times too, it's like where he's tired or and the people still sort of are coming, and he doesn't turn them away, even though I'm sure it's like it had to be very physically tiring. And there's times, like I said, where he does retreat and for a while, and I was thinking, he's sleeping in the boat in the storm. It's like maybe it's one of those points where he's so tired and he's not sort of concerned about with the storm and things that's going on around him. But he rests, he takes that time, but yet he's always kind of willing to jump back into it and take care of the needs of others, over and against him, himself. So yeah, I think it says a lot about his compassion.
Have some expectations about how people behave in grief. Everyone grieves differently, but we tend to to think that there's certain things people need to do. I'm thinking, so when my father's father, died of pneumonia in 1935, and when he did, his youngest son, my Uncle Bob, went was also very ill.
Mm.
They said pneumonia. I don't know whether it was pneumonia or flu or what it was. But so one of the things that happened was that my uncle was too sick and my grandmother couldn't go to my grandfather's funeral.
Mm.
So she stayed home, and this was all the scandal in their little town in Illinois, and in rural farm town in Illinois, that Gertie didn't come to her husband's funeral, like this was some kind of, but basically what she was doing was, I have something else I need to do right now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have time to do, to be selfish about my grief. I can grieve, but I don't have the capacity. This is not a time for me to be selfish about it. This is a time when I need to to do what's expected of me. And Jesus is the same thing. It's like, yeah, I would like to be, I would like to be able to grieve with this. Not only was John the cousin, but he was, we know from the stories about Elizabeth and, that John was very special as when Jesus was first born. And, but he says, this is not the time for that. The time right now, what I have to do is what I have to do.
Yeah.
A lot of us would do the same thing. You see it. Kathy, you had your parents here immediately after Bob died.
Right.
And you took care of your parents. And are still taking care of your mom.
Yeah.
This is what God wants us to be like.
Mm-hmm.
And Jesus modeled that.
Yeah. I think, yeah, exactly. Like I said, yeah, with your aunt and like I said, with Kathy too. And, it's just, you're obviously grieving. And, I can think too with myself, it's like, okay, with, my dad, and then it's now my priority is my mother, and sort of making sure, we're kind of taking care of things there and her needs. And, cause she relied a lot, on my dad and what he would, what he was doing for her. And so there was kind of a big void there. And so you just kind of, obviously you grieve and you're sad and you go through all that, but that you kind of have other priorities and things you just kind of have to respond to and attend to and do what you can to, because it's like you still have that other person that you have to take care of and look after. So, I think that's kind of what Jesus is kind of showing us, that example. And then kind of number 189, what motivated the disciples to come to Jesus with the suggestion that he send the crowd away so they could buy themselves some food? How did Jesus challenge them, and how did they respond? Kind of interesting response, but.
Well, they were kind of planning ahead. It's getting towards evening. People be hungry.
Yeah.
They packed a picnic supper. Maybe they had lunch, but they didn't have supper.
No.
And time to send them on their way, Jesus. And
yeah.
And,
I mean, you can't sort of fault them. I mean, you're kind of just thinking, well, it's probably time for them to go home and get something to eat. So, I mean, how many of us
put the kids to bed.
Yeah, right. How many of us would maybe have, responded that way too? It's like, well, it's that time, and it's like we don't have anything right now. So, but his response is, well, okay, here you go. They're here. Don't, feed them. Do something. It's like, okay, what do we do? Yeah, I mean, but so, I mean, they certainly, they kind of respond, and but he's like, give them something to eat. And He's like, they go, okay, well, we have 5 loaves and a couple of fish, so that's what we got. And of course, Jesus multiplies that, but it's like, okay, Jesus, here's our resources, but maybe you got a better idea. And of course, Jesus responds and multiplies it, but yeah.
Mark,
yeah.
Mark talks a little bit more about what happened.
Oh yeah.
You know, he says, so
Yeah.
basically, he says, send them away, and he says, you give them, it says, you know, and their first response was not, oh, okay. Their first response was, so you want us to go buy 200 denarii worth of bread and give it to them to eat? You know, it's like,
Yeah.
you know,
Right.
and he said, okay, and then he said, well, how many loaves do you have? And, you know, go see. And they said, we had 5 loaves and 2 fish. And then, you know, he sat them down and he put them in groups, and, you know, he divided the 2 fish among them all, and they still ate. You know, it's like, you know, but the first response of the disciples was, well, that doesn't make any sense.
Right.
You know, how are we going to do that?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
and
you're right. But
okay.
Mark gives us a lot more detail,
Yeah.
you know, about that. Yeah. It's like, well, wait a minute. Yeah, we're gonna have to buy like, yeah, a lot of food.
Uh-huh.
And you know, and then the expense of it, yeah. And but like, yeah, it does go into a lot more detail about that. And okay, this is what we got, but yeah, and this is how much it's going to cost. But you know, which kind of brings us to the next question. I mean, how do Jesus' words pose a challenge also for us today? Let's just take a look at 1 John 3:16 through 18. Somebody have that one? Would like to read?
Oh,
Let's see. John.
3:16. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, 1 John.
1 John, all the 3:16s are interesting verses.
Yeah.
If you've ever gone through then all the 3:16s.
I've read all of them, and some are not that interesting.
But a lot of them are.
Yeah, I know, but I looked through it. I compiled them once.
Anyway, who's going to read?
I can read
got
out
it. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, this is going to be a little different version than most of the rest of you, but this is how we know what love is. Jesus Christ laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for our brothers. If anyone has material possessions and sees his brother in need, but has no pity on him, how can the love of God be in him? Dear children, let us not love with words or tongue, but with actions and in truth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So yes, yeah, by this we know love, that he laid down his life for us. Yeah, I mean, shows his love for us. And so then as a result or a response to that, we respond in love. We lay down our lives for others as well.
And maybe we don't need to lay down our life necessarily, but
no.
God's going to multiply our meager resources for the good of his kingdom too. So, you know, we give what we can, we do what we can, but lots more happens than just what we did.
Right.
Because God would use that.
Mm-hmm.
You tell someone and they tell someone and they tell someone, and that's people paying it forward, that sort of thing.
It does. Yeah,
It happens.
I think so too. Yeah, you respond to somebody, and then in turn somebody else does that. And well, I think too there's the expectation, if we do have the means, that we use those means to help others. And if we have maybe some extra, or and then God again entrusts us with certain things, but he does expect us to use those gifts and abilities and talents, and to hopefully help somebody else with them. And if we, it's not necessarily, money itself isn't necessarily, it's what people do with it. It's kind of the problem. Money itself isn't necessarily bad, but it's what we do with it, and we recognize where it comes from. And then, and if we have an abundance, then, we're not just storing it up in a barn, or someplace like it mentions in scripture, or keeping it for ourselves. And, much is expected of us. It's like with the talents. The master gives them certain large amounts and expects them to kind of use that for the benefit of others, or to have some kind of return on it. Yes, dear.
I like that passage in the Bible where it says that in your fields you're supposed to leave some for the widows and the orphans and the hungry.
Yep.
So that's just a little thing that you could do, just to you still gather what you need to, but then leave a little bit for other people. I like that.
Yeah. In the Old Testament, it talks about that. It's like there's widows and orphans, and you have stuff that's left, that you leave it. You don't, that can go to, they can come and take, from that and use it too. And they need it. Don't just sort of waste it or let it go to the birds or whatever. But there is that expectation that those, whatever sort of left over, will be, used. And interesting too, when he feeds the 5,000, they gather up all the sort of what's left too, leftovers, so that again it can be used. Nothing's sort of wasted. And I think that's true for, should be for us as well, that we don't waste anything that we've been given, but use it hopefully for others. If we have an abundance, then we can share more, we can do more too, if we have more wealth. And then what about how can we best approach the challenge of feeding the hungry of America and of the world? Well, kind of, in a way, address that. Is there anything else or other ways that we can do that?
Well, I think pooling your resources is something that there was no abundance at that picnic. It wasn't that anybody was giving from their excess. It was, all there was this little bit, and yet mighty things happened. And so even our little bits can contribute. So you don't have to wait until you have extra to start doing good.
That is true, right?
The widow's mite and all of that. It's
even so, if you have a little bit,
if you have anything left over at the end of the month, put it in the offering plate. No, that's
no, it's not. That's not. No, it's really kind of the first fruits. Is the idea, and so take that first of all, and then whatever's left to sort of pay.
And you'll get through your month in any case, because God wants to take care of you, but He's also using you to take care of the other people.
Exactly. That's
the apostles. It's like, we don't have that much,
Right.
Even though Judas is a penny pincher, I'm sure we don't have enough to buy all this bread.
That is kind of the thing that Dave Ramsey too mentions too, is that he makes that point. It's like you give your, off the top, first of all to the Lord and other things that are needed. to give to, and then everything else, you take care of your bills and so forth. So,
Pastor, have you
yes.
heard? So, we have a situation where Congress threw out a lifeline, and it only lasted till the end of July.
Yeah.
And as of yet, a new lifeline has not been constructed. Have you heard anything that Synod is doing to try and fill in the gap while we, when I hear from churches right now is mostly, we're mad because you're telling us what to do. I don't hear a whole lot of, we're here trying to help you figure out what to do.
Yeah.
But I might be not here listening to the right places. So that's why I'm listening.
Yeah, I know that for congregations, there certainly are resources and things. And I know even for church workers, I think it's, I want to say Soldiers of the Cross or something. Anyway, there's that, there's some money, and actually a lot of that has been used to kind of help in those situations, especially with not just the pastors or teachers, but just other people in congregations, and at least trying to kind of keep those afloat. I know some of as far as the Synod, I know that there are those resources, and I know like with the district too, if there is a need or something, that to definitely to let them know, if there's some, or some, if the congregation is struggling. And but no, that's a good question. But yeah, you sort of hear a lot more about sort of people getting angry about things that we have to sort of do. But
well, even what you mentioned,
yeah,
is inReach. What about outreach?
Yeah, outreach. Yeah, I don't know. As far as, I haven't heard anything really specifically, or to kind of, I know that there's been things in the past where we had a disaster response to a hurricane or things like that, but I haven't heard anything as far as like kind of. Yes, dear.
I have. It's in the Lutheran Witness and such that
Okay.
congregations are reaching out and are helping others in need.
Okay.
So yeah, there are lots
more
of
congregational level. Okay. Yeah, I think it's
well,
more.
and they also, Pastor, they took from the disaster response funds, and they reallocated some of that to the Soldiers of the Cross, and
Okay.
our pastors, teachers, that there's been a fund set up years ago for that group, and like widows of pastors and stuff like that, to kind of bridge gaps when there was a shortfall. And they're trying to replenish those funds. There's been a call for donations to that, and it's through LCEF, and LCEF has also come forward with some millions, and they've pooled all of that. But ongoing, like if people are out of work and they've been fine because they got the extra $600 a week, that change can be what throws them over the edge. So certainly if we are aware of anyone, if you hear of anyone, especially in the congregation, please let us know. But
yeah, I think you're right. I did.
Not necessarily who, but also remember that there are some funds in the bank already, in what we call the benevolence fund. There is still a few $100s in there that you can use, as needed, without even coming to the congregation for more, if that was sufficient to. Amy could probably tell you exactly what that is.
Yeah, that's why I thought there was something.
Lost track of, we've lost track of it on the report.
Yeah.
It was accumulated years ago, and we haven't needed it. So it, in the ongoing money trail, you don't see it, but
No.
it's there. And it was sort of somebody's down on their luck, or they lost their job and they need 1 month's rent, but
Yeah.
this might be a little longer problem.
Oh, yeah. And definitely trying to kind of check with people. And so far, nobody I know of, but yeah, I do remember there was something in there. And I do recall, the thing with LCEF, that there were some funds that they were doing. I don't know if anything with Thrivent, or if they're, doing anything or not either. But yeah, I think there's been like Rebecca was saying too, there's been a local response. I know there's been some things in the Lutheran Witness with that. And, thanks for reminding me about that, with local congregations that are kind of responding in various ways to their communities. Particularly, too, with what's, going on within the cities and the riots, and so there's definitely, so if anyone knows too, somebody's struggling, to definitely let me know. And then we can, try to address it, because we've helped, a congregation member in the past with something, and if needed, and, so that's, if that need arises, I think we'll rise to the occasion, and which we do with a lot of our human care projects and things that we do. We've always met those needs and then some. So, but so I think I did get kind of a report from with Camp Perkins, and I know that they, of course, didn't have near sort of the camp, the programs and stuff this summer, and so there was some need there, but the LWML responded, and I think raised $16,400. So to help with, which actually kind of paid for some of their salaries of the staff that were there this summer, and kind of made up for the shortfall. And I know some families too, just donated what they would have, what they spent to go to camp this summer. So so I think, there are different things, needs like that are out there, and people certainly are responding. And and if anyone, if you know somebody that has move out of the sun here, has a need, we can definitely try to do what we can, and I know people will respond like they usually do, and very generously. But something, to be aware of and to keep in mind. Let's see. So kind of looking at with our questions here. And it mentions here, Matthew didn't mention the lad who supplied the loaves of fish. John did not mention the distribution of the fish, like our Mark pointed out in the Gospel of Mark, as Mark did. So Matthew kind of hurried to the miracle itself. So that's kind of interesting. And then, but how did Jesus focus attention on the divine nature of what was happening?
We said a blessing first.
Mm-hmm.
So,
right. First thing he does, right? Yeah. He blesses.
Yeah. He points to the sky. So he's invoking God's help.
Yeah, he is. Exactly.
And that's something they could all see.
Yeah. So they could see that he, it's like the first thing is evoke a blessing, I think, to give thanks for what's been provided. I think that's important too, because ultimately it comes from God, and he's multiplied it and blessed it. And so as a result, there's a great multiplication of what's there. So much so they have more than they could enough that there's leftovers. So yeah, for sure. And then, so this Greek word kind of ephagon, or the aid, is the word that was used for the feeding cattle as much as they can eat, to fatten them for market. It's kind of interesting, but it emphasizes the abundance of Jesus' provision. So it's an abundant meal. It's not, a meager meal per se. It's certainly, there's abundance there. And then kind of 192, what numbers did Matthew include to emphasize the magnitude of the miracle?
2, 5, and 12.
Yeah.
The 12 baskets, and he also brings up that 5,000 men along with the women and children ate, which, so if you estimate, 5,000 men, each one of them have a wife with them. So
Right.
that's another 5,000.
Yeah.
And historical evidence and stuff like it's, anywhere between 3 and 5 children, especially in that area at that time. You had children, you start young, you have between 3 and 5,
That's true.
depending on the average age.
Right.
So that's, another anywhere between 15 and 20,000 there in children.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, you think there's a lot.
That's a lot.
We just talk about 5,000, but that's just the men. So, and then like I said, yeah, and then you have their wives. So if they all had wives, depending if they did, maybe they didn't all have wives, but that's 10,000 plus. Yeah. So you've got a lot of people congregating together. And then the fact that all those people are fed and satisfied, and there's there's leftovers as well. So that's pretty significant when you think about it. How much abundance is there, and what Jesus provided. So this is the magnitude of it. I mean, is huge. When you look at the numbers and how many people were actually there and present for this. Okay. Any other things with the text that anyone kind of noticed or have a question about, or? So, because we have about 15 minutes, we could get into the Old Testament lesson, at least here a little bit, if everyone's ready to do that. All right, let's take a look at Isaiah 55, 1 through 5. So it says here, "Come everyone who thirsts, come to the waters. And he who has no money, come, buy and eat. Come buy wine and milk without money and without price. Why do you spend your money for that which is not bread, and your labor for that which does not satisfy? Listen diligently to me, and eat what is good, and delight yourselves in rich food. Incline your ear and come to me, hear, that your soul may live. And I will make with you an everlasting covenant, my steadfast, sure love for David. Behold, I made him a witness to the peoples, a leader and commander for the peoples. Behold, you shall call a nation that you do not know, and a nation that did not know. Did not know, you shall run to you, because of the Lord your God, and of the Holy One of Israel, for he has glorified you." Okay. So kind of similar, at least kind of similar theme here. So the banquet invitation is part of the messianic assurance that is so strong in Isaiah 40, chapters 40 through 66, the servant songs in chapters 42 through 53, picture the servant as the agent through whom the gift is given. And now this invitation to To the free banquet offers the benefit he made available through his faithful service. The promises of Isaiah found their immediate meaning in the assurances they brought to the people of Judah in exile, but they find their ultimate and full meaning in the eternal messianic kingdom. So what about this 193? What do the phrases, everyone who thirsts and he who has no money, say about those whom the invitation is given? Yeah, I'll think about that.
Well, we don't have to pay for it. We don't have to do anything for it.
That's right.
Everyone who thirsts is anyone.
Yeah.
And you don't have to, there's he who has no money, so you don't have to worry about paying for it. It's a free gift.
Yeah. It doesn't specify, I mean, who, it's just everyone who, yeah, you have no money, that's okay. Come buy, eat, come buy wine, milk without money, without price. It's free. It's fully, given freely. Yeah. So sounds pretty good, doesn't it?
It reminds me of the Sermon on the Mount.
Yeah.
Blessed are you, who hunger or thirst for righteousness. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. So, Isaiah, like Jesus would after him, are, reaching out to people who might feel that they have been excluded.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyone who's been, excluded, or, you are included, and that's, and it's all part of the Messianic kingdom. And Jesus, of course, says, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. And part of that is that people can come and eat and have, their fill. Jesus, of course, takes care of their physical needs, but also their spiritual as well. And he's feeding, he's also, of course, healing, and then he's, in many cases too, first thing he does too is he forgives their sins. They're coming to receive all these gifts. And then, but then what does buy wine and milk without money, without price, say about the one extending the invitation?
He's rich.
Yeah, he's very rich. Yeah. He has generous, rich and generous, full grace, mercy. The Lord is gracious and merciful, right? Slow to anger, abounding in steadfast love, and as scriptures tell us, and it's being demonstrated, and it's like this passage is like being in a sense fulfilled with Jesus, with feeding all these people, right? We see this kind of happening in the person and work of Jesus. And so, but in the case of Isaiah, in that context too, he's also, God's taking care of his people, even in exile. He's, even though they are not in their homeland, and yet, he's still providing for them, preserving them, and providing, for their needs where they are. And so you have to kind of look at that as well. He's taking care of them, preserving them, even though they're far away from home. And let's see. And then what about then, how were the people of Judah spending money for that which is not bread, and laboring for that which does not satisfy? In Isaiah.
I think everybody does that.
True.
We devote resources to things that will not benefit us.
Yes.
Whether it's Netflix or...
You're entertaining though, Mark.
Well, yeah.
Right.
I don't know that that's what, I don't know what Jesus would think about Netflix, but
Yeah.
or Facebook or
Yeah.
Whatever else it might be.
Yes.
Sometimes it's just having more money to have more money. And you think, oh, well, when I get to this certain level, then I'll be satisfied. And of course you're not, and you keep amassing more.
When I get to a certain point, I'll help people.
Yeah, right.
Ah.
Exactly.
When I have enough, then I'll help people.
Yeah.
And then you never do.
You never do.
No.
The guy who's storing up in barns, and then he's called home that night, and so then what good was it? And so but he was not satisfied. He didn't.
No.
Yeah.
Well, it's like in the Ecclesiastes too. It's vanity. Vanity. It's just striving after the wind. Is what he talks about, Solomon. And Solomon, I think, kind of understood that too. It's like he has all this wealth and prestige and everything, and wives and so forth, and it's like, but it doesn't matter. It's just it's just striving after the wind, and then it's his foreign wives that kind of lead to his downfall, at least, and his falling away, too. But yeah, there's that tendency. It's like, well, if I just have this or have enough of this, then I'm going to, then I can do this or give or whatever. Yeah. And no, it's really doesn't matter. I mean, what you have, or if you don't have that much, is that even so, I think expectation is that you still are giving, from your first fruits, and then God kind of does, he does take care of the rest of it, and it works out okay.
Well, and how many people do you know that work all the time to get money, and then their kids don't?
Cheryl froze.
Uh-oh. Lost Cheryl.
Oh, really lost him.
Yeah. Oh no.
Come back.
I think maybe what she's saying, I think people that work and then he's trying to give, maybe their children all these things, but it really, maybe the children don't really appreciate those things, or they, probably maybe because they didn't really work for it or earn it, or, so I think it's important that, yes, go ahead, sweetheart.
I think it's like that song, that the guy never had time for his child. That's really all kids want. I don't think a lot of the kids even remember the things that they have, but they remember the time that they spent with their parents.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I remember the most, it's just the times, that, my dad always kind of made a point to do things, together. It didn't really matter what, a lot of different things, but it's like, I really remember cherish that time, more than anything else, than the things that, sort of that inherited or whatever, but it was that time that was really important and special. And I think more than anything, it's not all that, it's like, we're trying to give them a better life, or to give them all the things that they need or, want, but it's not always a good thing either. They just want your time. That's for sure. And let's see, and then there's kind of point, see, what did the prophet point to as the key for those who wish to eat what is good and delight yourselves in rich food? What do you think? He says, so let's see, this could be diligently eat what is good, delight yourselves in rich food, incline your ear to me, come to me here. that your soul may live, and I will make with you an everlasting covenant. So, yeah, I mean, it kind of says, yeah, listen to me, eat what is good, and delight yourselves in the rich food. But then he kind of goes in verse 3, incline your ear to me and come to me and hear that your soul may live. Okay, I'm providing you with food and, this nourishment and with this abundance, but then he's kind of like, but listen, listen to what I have to say, because that's what's going to feed your soul. And then the fact that he's going to make an everlasting covenant, with them, my steadfast and sure love for David, and that he's remembering David and the love, and that covenant he made with him, and that same covenant applies to the people of Judah as well. But I'm going to provide for your physical needs, but ultimately, yeah. But leading up to this, but because I want for you to be able to listen and to hear what I have to say, and because that's what's going to feed you in your soul ultimately, and that the food and all these other things will don't last, and our lives are sort of short, and as far as in comparison to eternity. And so really, yeah, I mean, I think Jesus again wanted to keep the people there to feed them and to sustain them physically, but ultimately so that they would be able to hear the good news of salvation. Because I think people, if they're not fed, or if they're not taken care of, or their physical needs, then they're not going to be receptive to anything that's going to help them spiritually, I think, if they're starving to death. So that makes sense. Okay, what time? 1 minute left. And so 197, what's the everlasting covenant the Lord made with David, and who is the one who will be a witness to the peoples, a leader and commander for the peoples, and will as a result attract the nations to Israel? Maybe we'll end with that passage, but yeah, so 2 Samuel says, chapter 7, 8 through 16. He says, now, therefore, thus you shall say to my servant David, thus says the Lord of hosts, I took you from the pasture and from following the sheep, that you should be a prince over my people of Israel, and I have made with you, and I have been with you wherever you went, and have cut off all your enemies from before you, and I will make for you a great name, like the name of the great ones of the earth, and I will appoint a place for my people Israel, and will plant them, so that they may dwell in their own place and be disturbed no more. And violent men shall afflict them no more, as formerly, from that time that I appointed judges over my people of Israel. And I will give you rest from all your enemies. Moreover, the Lord declares to you that the Lord will make you a house. And when your days are fulfilled and you lie down with your fathers, I will raise up your offspring after you, who shall come from your body, and I will establish his kingdom, and he shall build a house with my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. And I will be to him a father, and he shall be to me a son. And when he commits iniquity, I will discipline him with the rod of men, and with the stripes of the sons of men. But my steadfast love will not depart from him, as I took it from Saul, whom I put away from before you. And your house and your kingdom shall be made sure forever before me. Your throne shall be established forever. Okay, so with that in mind, what's he saying here about the covenant with David?
He's talking about Jesus.
Yeah, ultimately,
David's offspring.
Mm-hmm. David's offspring, and certainly, and the establishment of his house, which will be built by Solomon, but ultimately, yeah, through David's offspring, Jesus, then God's, covenant to an everlasting covenant to save his people will come to fruition. So, yeah. Okay. We're out of time. Any other questions about that? And does that kind of tie in with the gospel for today? Yeah, I think so. For sure. Okay. Without any other questions, shall we close with the Lord's Prayer then? Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. All right. Thank you all for coming, and hopefully I'll see some of you at worship here in a few minutes. So God bless you all. Thanks.